back to the Four Dorksmen. Start again. Hey everybody, welcome to the Four Hauntsmen. We're back, episode 3. So much has happened since the last time that we spoke. It's only a couple of weeks ago. We are back with Paul.
What?
Joey. That is me.
I did that wrong. I should have gone woot woot. Since in honor of you seeing Twisted the other night in concert.
I saw, and that is Halloween Horror Nights related almost, because or maybe not Halloween Horror Nights related anymore. Now that's Warner Brothers tour related, because or maybe half and half, right? It's like a meeting of the giants and on stage. They have Michael Myers and Jason both on stage together
with pogo sticks.
Yeah, the Juggalos,
right?
So, I have a feeling this one's going to be a little bit all over the place. But it's been a couple weeks since we last got together. We're back. We've had a trip over to California for a little bit. Universal has announced a couple of things, one on purpose, and of course, more not intentionally. We've got updates for howl-o-scream and some of the other local haunts going on. So let's get into things. Universal Studios, guys, I think right after we had wrapped the last podcast, they announced Carnival Graveyard. It Rust in Pieces is the subtitle for that. Is that the right name?
It sounds about right. We'll take your word for it.
And it's basically, their next original ground-up house, designed around an abandoned or graveyard for carnival pieces and carnies that are evil, and I can only imagine the goodness that's going to be in it. It's probably one of the most exciting announcements that I've seen so far from them.
Yeah, it's they've got, so it's going to be one of the soundstage houses. They showed some pictures online of some props and stuff and some of the facade. It's pretty crazy looking. I mean, I think it's going to be, I think this one, of course there's still, I guess, 3 more houses that we don't know anything about, not even the leak that we're about to talk about. But I think this one is going to be one of those like ghost town / whatever the Bayou one last year. That's just going to be like super impressive on the scale. That's the impression I get.
I'm waiting for art and design to really wow us with, some of the rusting out of stuff. I mean, of course, they have rusts and pieces in there. I always laugh because I think last year they in the UFO scare zone, they kind of used the picture of a UFO, or that how they built that out based off of something that tied back through some artwork from Megadeth at the time. And now we have Rust in Pieces, which, kind of ties back to a Megadeth record, which also is same title being used in Screamageddon also. But all that aside, I'm really looking forward to the aesthetics of the house. I think it's going to be one of those things of beauty that you get sucked into looking at the aesthetics, and then you really get the crap scared out of you.
Maybe they're just building up to that Megadeth house.
I was going to say, is Megadeth in the house?
Vic Rattlehead.
Yes.
Is he there?
Confirmed. Hashtag.
Joey, what do you think?
It kind of sounds familiar to the one Knott's Berry Farm had a year ago, I think, where it was wasn't it like an abandoned carnival or an abandoned amusement park? It was called like Dark Ride or something, right?
Yeah, I think it was an abandoned ride, and I think it was called Dark Ride, where you went, they made it look like you were walking onto the track of the old ride kind of thing.
Yeah. On the bottom I actually had the track lined out.
Yeah.
I mean, all I've seen of this was just what was the concept art, or was a photo someone took of the facade?
I think it was concept art.
Well, no, there was a picture of the facade that made its way onto the pass holder Facebook group the other day.
Oh, okay. It's pretty cool looking. I'm looking forward to it.
And I think that we saw a couple of the pictures of things, at least concept stuff, when we were at Midsummer, which is what ended up on social media also.
I mean, I'm definitely more excited for that than Stranger Things, but that's just me.
It's not to me. Yeah. I mean, to me, it's kind of funny that you're using those kind of carnival-y or I don't know if that's a word, or circus type light up letters as well for the font for the house, because it kind of harkens back to the 25 years house and the 25-year event. And of course, I think there's going to be a good deal of folks that are assuming that either Jack will be tied to this or in it, or part of the event now, because we've made that announcement around Carnival Graveyard. And I think there's going to be a lot of disappointed folks. I think we're going to see a lot of clowns this year. I just don't think we're going to see the clown this year.
I bet you will see. I mean, they have always done some type of Easter egg stuff.
Yeah, I mean, Easter egg for sure. I'm just thinking, not prominently featured.
No. I think he would have already been all over the marketing by now.
And if the marketing that leaked out is to be believed, and so what I'm referring to is that the other day someone posted on, I don't know, one of the HHN Facebook groups that they were staying at the Clarion Inn on International Drive, and it was a picture of the monitor in the lobby that's just like a PowerPoint presentation or slides, I guess, of local ads and stuff like that, and they accidentally put out the Halloween Horror Nights 28 ad early, and the key art for the event, so it doesn't include Jack, first of all. It's very much based in the IPs, much like the last year's. But the 3 IPs that are being featured on the key art are Stranger Things, already announced, and not announced yet, Poltergeist and Halloween 4.
2 MVPs right there.
Yeah, I like both of those announcements. I know a lot of people are like, hey, well, oh no, you were joking. I was actually serious. I'm actually kind of excited about both of those properties.
I wasn't joking.
Oh, okay.
I don't think Joey is serious. I think
I've been saying Poltergeist for months now. I'm like, yes, finally. That could be the scariest house there if done right.
If done right, yeah. I think there's a lot of potential for both of them. And I know a lot of people are like, why aren't they doing the new Halloween? And I've got to imagine it's related to a rights thing. But they're like, well, we should still have Michael Myers because he's still going to be on people's minds since that new movie's coming out. And Halloween 4 is, it's not the best Halloween film, but it's up there for me.
I gotta say, for them to do Halloween 4, I think that takes a lot of balls. And in that leaked image, the masks they're using, at least for the marketing, is not the same Myers mask you see in 4 and 5, which I kind of like, because that's one of the reasons why I don't ever watch 4 and 5. I think his mask just looks horrendous and horrible.
Yeah.
So if they're using all the leftover masks from the last couple of years, hey, I'm better with that. Is it canon? No, but I mean, do I ever really need that? That movie's no longer canon anyways. Who cares?
Exactly.
Well, that's one thing for sure. I mean, I agree with the mask, that the masks are awful in those movies. But we already know from the hype leading up to this new movie that the rest of the franchise doesn't exist. Going forward, after the new Halloween comes out, it's Halloween, the original, and this new movie.
Yeah,
that's it. It seems mind-boggling. I mean, unless you peel back the layers and really understand, how I think the business side of things works, and you get into like this inside baseball conversation here, right? Where I'm sure they had to be working with the intent that they would be developing a house based off of the current Halloween movie, and whether that didn't flush out the way that other houses in the past, like Scream, and I think it was The Conjuring last year, right? That got zapped, and we ended up with the vampires instead. This happens. Work needs to start at a certain time, and if the agreement's not there, then it's an audible, and the audible, I guess, is we've got these other things set up around same locales and things like that. Let's just throw a different Michael Myers in there, and I could see it's either that or they knew right away that they weren't going to be able to work with the current IP. There's a lot of strange legalities around who owns what with that franchise going forward, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when with the IP piece when we get to the Midsummer Scream discussion. But
yeah,
it could have been Michael Myers goes to summer camp and Michael Myers scared stupid, I'd still be excited.
Yeah, I feel like when it comes to Halloween, when it comes to Michael Myers, I guess, it's funny that they're going with 4, but at least we'll see some scenes from 4, which, I thought about it the other day. There's Michael Myers, taking on the police station and the scene in the school. I mean, there are a couple of scenes that will lend themselves really well to a haunted house. But I think in general, when it comes to some of these big name characters like Michael, Freddy, or Jason, I think there are fans who, who will like the callbacks to Halloween 4, but I think the vast majority of people legit don't care. Like, it could be 10 random sequences, 10 random rooms with Michael Myers, and I think as long as the general consensus is that there's some pumpkins around and it feels kind of Halloween-y, that you get the point. And I think that's the same. I think the same is the case with most of those big name villains. It's about the villain, not about the set piece itself. And so I think this is just, I think we care by saying, oh, it's not in continuity anymore, blah, blah, blah. I think 90% of people who attend that event don't care. It's the Michael Myers house.
It's a happy accident for them too, because now, it fits their narrative of we're doing things based off of the 80s.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if it worked out the right way, then, they have a feather in their cap and say, like, we're supporting probably the biggest draw of a horror movie that we're going to get, possibly ever, when it opens, with all the kind of the new fans and the legacy of that franchise building up. But B, to go to the audible route, and all of a sudden, we can say, well, we intended to do that, and it was a 1980s movie.
Yeah. I think it's Halloween, right? Halloween's my favorite horror franchise. Even though I hated the Rob Zombie ones, but hopefully the new one's good. But I am excited about both of those announcements. It is funny to me that the two of the 3 properties that they are featuring in their big promo aren't really entirely relevant. I mean, I guess Michael Myers is Michael Myers, right? But Poltergeist isn't a current thing that I think people think about regularly outside of
I don't think
us.
anybody even knows what Poltergeist is unless you're older and you experienced it as a kid.
Well, you don't have to be that much older.
I mean, you either watched it when you were a kid, like in the movies, like me, because I'm going to really date myself, or you watched it on like VHS. I don't know if you can even watch it anymore.
Or if you're like me and you grew up in the neighborhood opposite that house.
Nice. Or you could watch the remake, Kyle, with Sam Rockwell.
That never came out. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, don't watch that. Do not. I think what we're going to see over the coming weeks is a lot of people revisiting that film as a result of Horror Nights. And that's one thing that's good about Horror Nights, right? Killer Clowns is getting more attention now than it has in years. And I think the same will hold true of Poltergeist. I think a lot of the younger kids, like you said, that haven't seen the film will revisit it. And yeah, I mean, it's not all of it holds up, but it's still a darn good film.
It could be the scariest thing there if done right. Yeah.
And hey, more clowns.
But, I foresee another Exorcist house or
you think
American Werewolf in London, kind of like static sets of walking through.
A TV in every room.
Yeah. Well,
I liked an American Werewolf, I think.
There were some scenes that were good in that, but I mean, I'm just saying for the most part, it's kind of,
It's a love letter more than an actual scary house.
Yes, exactly.
Well, speaking of love letters, we went to a love letter to Halloween. Kyle and I, last weekend? Yeah, last weekend. I mean, by the time you guys are listening to this, it may have been a week and a half, 2 weeks. We went to Midsummer Scream, a Halloween convention out in Long Beach, California. 2 days, Saturday and Sunday, featured the entire Long Beach Convention Center. Well, most of the Long Beach Convention Center was taken up by this. The exhibit hall was split into 2 sides. One side was 8 rows, I think there were 8 rows of vendors and celebrities signing autographs and things like that. And then the other half of the exhibit hall, the lights were dimmed, the fog machines were turned on, and there were about 10 or 12, not including the escape rooms and some of the VR things, haunted house experiences, like miniature haunted house experiences, each with probably 3 to 5 rooms of, actual live actors, and some of them even special effects and lighting and sound effects and things like that, and set pieces. And so, Kyle, did anything really stand out for you as far as some of the stuff that we saw?
Yeah, I'm blown away that something so awesome exists in one part of the country and it doesn't have a mirror event here. We have Spooky Empire here, which I love the spooky folks, but it's not Midsummer Scream. And I know that this year they expanded on the Hall of Shadows, which you're referring to for the mini haunts. That was probably the coolest thing that I've ever done at a convention before. And it was about like 12 mini haunts. Some of them were just absolutely amazing. Some of them maybe not as amazing, but still incredible to have everything there. It was literally like going to Horror Nights in a convention center.
And and I don't mean to cut you off, but I do want to say something. Regardless of the quality of them, the majority of them, out of the 12, there was a Six Flags one, of course, and some of them were larger local businesses, but a lot of them were home haunters. Yeah. So for a home haunter to be set up in there, and do some of the stuff they did, and we're going to talk about some of the great ones we saw. It was definitely impressive.
Yeah, they had a trick or treat house there, even though, we know Trick or Treat is coming as a house and a scare zone to Hollywood, but just a house in Orlando. The Trick or Treat house was a home haunt last year. It's, just a mom and pop place. And I mean, the costumes were spot on. They had the sound effects. There were props everywhere. I thought the house was amazing. We went through that a few times, and every time it was just a giant smile from ear to ear going through that house.
There was nothing about that house that didn't seem like it was a professional house. It was put on by kids, I think. And when I say kids, I don't mean to be disrespectful. I just mean that they were young. And the fact that they did that, it absolutely felt like a professional thing. And I think it was Murder House Productions, if I remember correctly. MHP Haunt on Twitter. You can check it out, and I know Kyle and I both posted videos on our YouTube channels from inside the house. But yeah, pretty great.
Yeah, that one I thought was great. Annalise, The Experience, from Twisted Minds Productions. I mean, this was a house that was, again, just like 3 or 4 rooms, but designed by 3 16-year-old girls, acted in the house by the 3 16-year-old girls. I think maybe one of their dads or somebody was in the house as one of the scares also. But I mean, I've watched the video that I shot of that house over and over again. It makes me jump every time. It is just amazing, the level of detail and just the effort that was put in. It was just awesome.
Yeah, and one that I really liked as well was I think it was called The Haunted Lodge from Scare Ventures, and it was looking at it was like in the back corner almost of the center, and I went through that one a couple of times because it had like a lodge set up in it with bunk beds, and you had like this Blair Witch tree thing going on in there. I liked that one too.
Yep. And we also had Six Flags Magic Mountain out there doing a scare zone for us, with kind of, I don't remember the names of the top like characters, the face of the franchise for them, but really a lot of fun going through that scare zone, and they swapped out actors throughout the day too. So I thought that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, that was really impressive for such a small space. And you did a VR thing, didn't you, with the Delusion?
I did.
Yes.
So for as long as I've been friends with Joey, he has raved about Delusion out in California, which is probably one of the more premier Halloween events, haunted events that they have in the state. But it is not a haunted house. You are basically partaking in kind of like a haunted play, and your actions and interactions with the characters drive the story. And we talked to the folks from Delusion, John Braver, I think it's Braver. I didn't post that interview yet, so he's got a little bit of cleaning up to do on that video and catch up from the time that we were out there. But they are introducing a VR edition of Delusion, which is called Lies Within. It's based off the story actually that Joey did in person at the actual event. But what I did was about a 35 or 37, somewhere in that range, minute VR experience, which was not something that you did with like handles or anything like that. It was just basically watching a 360 movie as if you're one of the folks along for the ride. And it was really awesome. It was an awesome experience. Delusion itself, just to give you an idea, I mean, we're here in August, and they're pretty much sold out through December, which is like their entire run. In that they do have like single spots open here and there, and they encouraged in the interview for folks to check their website for cancellations and things like that, and for some dates that may have like patchy availability. But very, very cool stuff. If I was to tell you what I saw, it would spoil everything. So I'm not going to do that. But the intent with the VR piece, at least, is, I think, to do a little bit more. While folks are waiting to go through the actual event, they will be able to do the VR piece while they're waiting for their actual event to start. And their goal is to roll out the VR piece on a larger scale for home use as well, I believe. So it was pretty awesome. And Paul?
Yeah.
Let's talk about panels.
So on day 2, so I didn't go to any panels on day 1, but on day 2, I started the day with the Queen Mary Dark Harbor panel, and I did it just for the hell of it. Honestly, it's not like I think I'll have an opportunity to go out there, but I've heard a lot about that event, and I was kind of curious about it. And so I was blown away with the presentation. I think that it's available on their Facebook page, but they brought in someone who was a pretty big deal from from Not Scary Farm. One of the house designers from Not Scary Farm, they hired him, and he has revamped the entire event. A lot of it has a choose-your-own adventure component to it. Even the bars have a choose-your-own adventure component to them, where if you unlock certain clues in both the houses and the bars and all the experiences, you get a special experience. That's exclusive to those who go through the trouble of figuring all those things out. Lots of the houses have interactive elements. It almost sounds too good to be true with how much they really are bringing to the event. There are, I believe, 5 or 6 general zones, and most of them have a bar, a house, some type of other experience, and each zone has its own icon that's associated with it, and they had all the icons there as part of the presentation. I would say if I were in California, that would probably be my number 1 event that I'd be looking forward to. And that's, we're going to talk about 2 others. So number 2, because we're about to talk about one that would be my number 1. But this would be number 2 because, wow, just super impressive. And if any of you guys who are listening have been to Queen Mary Dark Harbor, definitely hit us up on Instagram at 4Hauntsman, or leave a comment on our YouTube channel, because I'd love to hear more about the experience of that event.
Wait a minute. The 4Hauntsman has an Instagram page now?
Did I say Instagram? I said Twitter. Sorry, I meant Twitter. We don't have an Instagram page. Go to Twitter at 4Hauntsman. We don't have an Instagram page. If you go to Instagram, it's at IOM Geek, because that's the website that our podcast is housed on.
What about our Pinterest?
What about
we
our
have
Snapchat?
that now too?
We don't have that either.
MySpace /
I didn't go to that panel, Paul, but the characters that came out while we were waiting for another panel that we'll talk about in a moment, the makeup looked amazing. I wish I went to that panel, but instead I ate a chicken and cheese quesadilla. And I watched Urban Death. So I accomplished 2 things at one time.
Yeah, that's right. Well, right after that panel, I came out of that panel and hopped back in line for the next panel, which was the Warner Brothers Horror Made Here, a studio tour experience that's going to be out in California. And they unveiled everything about the event. Previously they had only announced that It and Batman Arkham Asylum would be there. I shouldn't say Batman, because Batman's not part of it. Arkham Asylum will be there. But they announced 3 other properties that will be at least 3 other properties, but 3 properties that'll be featured as attractions and other properties that'll be also referenced throughout the event.
What were they?
So in addition to Envision to It and Arkham Asylum, they're also going the actual studio tram experience brings you to Nightmare on Camp Crystal Lake, which is a mixture of Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th. There will also be the Exorcist Forbidden Screening, which is a screening of
4D experience.
Yeah, 4D experience featuring key scenes from The Exorcist played in the set of a church that's been used in movies like Monster Squad and other Warner Brothers properties. And there was the Conjuring universe will also be featured as a walkthrough attraction, and they will have a bar based on True Blood, an arcade based on Lost Boys, and a Tim Burton, I think, kind of what is the best
kind of
word?
an exhibit,
an exhibit,
like all
yeah,
props and things like that. So I've kind of let the Warner Brothers thing marinate over the last week or so being home and trying to figure out, like, is it amazing or is it awful? Right? Or is it somewhere in the middle?
Wow.
And I did have the opportunity to interview the folks from Warner Brothers. I think that where they're going with their event this year is interesting. And I think I've tried to say this in Twitter with the unfortunate limitation of characters, that it's not Halloween Horror Nights. It's not Knott's Berry Farm. It's not going to be your standard fare haunted house. They try to pitch this, especially when we spoke to them one-on-one, as this is a party in the streets. You know, you're gonna take a tram to the set of what they're using as their set for Jason versus Freddy, and it's not, that set is not from Jason versus Freddy or anything. It's just something that's kind of being repurposed as that. And that's where your adventure begins, to try to make it through, I guess, like more of an outdoor environment. There are things in there that sound really cool in the event. The houses for Conjuring. The Arkham Asylum house sounds just amazing, because it's a limited experience for smaller groups, and they've kind of hinted this thing over and over again, just so that folks really get the point before they make the plunge for buying tickets. They are not a theme park, and they're not trying to be a theme park. They're not going to be able to expand to a theme park size to give you extra things to do. For all of the awesomeness that they said, like, the Conjuring house should be really cool, and it's got props from the actual movie. So the Annalise doll from the movie is in the house. The It props are movie props. It's not the same It house that was on Hollywood and Vine last year that they repurposed for inside, but I don't get the impression that they're very large haunts. The wait times for these are going to be large enough. They admitted last year the waits were like 45 minutes to an hour each. Outside of, this year they've added a VIP package, the Losers Club. But the waits outside, they're calling them active waits, where they'll have not scare zones, but some, I guess, some scare actors or some things, to suck in your time as you're waiting outside. The things that kind of, take a step back for me, where, I say, like, is this awesome or is it just really not that great? Like, we get to, like, the Lost Boys, which, they use prominently in their picture and talk up Lost Boys. And it's like, it's a freaking arcade, dude. It's Pac-Man and, like, Donkey Kong and stuff like that. And they're like, are they going to have the characters around to meet or to take pictures with or anything like that? And they're like, no. Will Beetlejuice be around in the exhibit to take a look at or to take pictures with or anything? No. And then, well, it gets, the last thing, which you could hear prominently in my video, not to plug anything that I push, but I posted the whole panel. They asked the question about Arkham Asylum, like, well, will Batman be there? And they're like, no. And it's a loud audible in the background, like, oh.
Why would he be in it?
Well, they're featuring all of the core villains from the Batman series in that house.
Yeah,
so it's not just Joker.
Oh, no. It's not going to be just Joker, but see, the one thing I took from that panel, and I watched it twice, they kept bringing up the phrase theater in the round, And to give you an idea what that really is, Delusion is the same thing. It's theater in the round. It's not a maze. Does it have horror elements, or a couple jump scares? Yes. But at the same time, it's not somebody just jumping out of a corner and saying boo and going back in the conga line. You're going to be going from set piece to set piece with live actors. So the Joker, the way they described it, he's going to sentence you either, what was it, guilty or innocent, or it could change.
Yeah, he'll either help you escape or sentence you to stay.
Yeah.
I hear. I do think it is going to be a very different experience than Halloween Horror Nights, but I think, for Halloween Horror Nights fans, there is Halloween Horror Nights right down the street, especially in California. But for out there, the theater in the round concept, for me, a part of me is very intrigued by that idea because I don't want to go to. I don't always appreciate, and don't get me wrong, I love Horror Nights. This is going to be, I think, my 11th time going to the event. But it feels like sometimes with these conga line experiences, what'll happen is if your timing is off, you'll miss everything in the house, right? If the person 3 people in front of you triggers everything, they'll get all the scares, and you'll walk through the empty scenes while they're resetting for the next, sound effect. But I think the concept of theater in the round is not entirely based on just timing, right? I think you'll have a more personalized experience, and that part is what intrigues me.
And that's what it is. I mean, you're going to be going room to room, and you're not going to be running through the rooms. The reason, I mean, if they're letting in small groups of people, no more. I mean, they can't let in more than 10 at once. Maybe not even 6.
I want you to finish the math, and I'm going to go over something with you that ties back to my conversation with them. So you think that 10 or 6 are going to go into a room at once?
I think they're going to go in the room at once. And what that does, I mean, just from the Delusion experience we had, I'll tell you right now, compared to everything else like conga lines or just, people jumping out at you, it's a completely different experience, but it's also very satisfying because it's so different, but it's so great that you take it all in. Like, it is immersive. But the fact that they're using really big IPs to give you that immersion, if done correctly, like let's say if everybody behind Delusions was given the Batman IP, I'd be like, oh my god, this is it. They're gonna nail it. So for me, that's why because I've experienced that sort of thing before, and I've been wanting it ever since, and I haven't been able to go back and do it. So now I'm kind of like, all right, I'm looking. I mean, I already bought the Loser Club ticket the moment they went on sale. I'm looking forward to it big time.
All right, so Delusion is a much smaller thing, right? Where they're only letting in a couple hundred people a night to be able to go through their house. All right, so one of the key things that I asked the Warner Brothers folks were how many people are going to be allowed into this event on a nightly basis. The answer was 3,000.
That's not a lot.
6,000 are allowed into, they were able to fit comfortably for their Christmas party last year. So 3,000 people over a 7-hour event, right? That's 428 people an hour that they've got to try to get through that house.
Yeah.
So you tell me that you think that 10 people or 6 people are going to go in at a time? It just wouldn't happen. I think that they're going to have capacity issues again, especially, or your interactivity is going to be more limited to like what we see at Blackpool Prison in Screamageddon.
So they're going to be punching you and...
No, I'm not talking about like hitting you and stuff. I'm just saying, you get like a split second with somebody and you're off to the next thing.
Okay, well, you're saying 400 people an hour, right?
Yep.
That's not bad. And on top of that, that's just one maze on top of everything else they have. I really think that's manageable because they have how many mazes? Pennywise, Batman,
so
Conjuring.
let's say four mazes, because not in counting Exorcist, that's about 100 an hour.
Well, 4 mazes, each doing...
They don't have 4 mazes, though. They have 3.
Yeah, they do. No, they have Conjuring, Batman...
It and Nightmare.
The tram tour. So that's 4, and then the Exorcist will probably hold. I mean, that's got to hold at least 100 people every, let's say, 15, 20 minutes. And then they're gonna have other stuff. They'll have like the VR for it. They were saying something about like a stage show, the scare zones. There's some kind of like ride, their carnival rides they're putting in there. I feel
I haven't heard anything about VR for it.
They've had the last couple of years. I feel like they're gonna bring it back. That's just me. But I feel like 3,000. I mean, I've been at a convention. So the convention I go to every June, E3, has like 55,000 people minimum, and you can't move. So I kind of equate that to Horror Nights. Whereas this other convention I used to go to in August only had 5,000 people. And I mean, you could like do backflips in the aisles if you wanted to. You could walk up to every game stage and not wait for it. So for me, that's kind of how I'm comparing it. Like, yeah, 3,000 people may sound like a lot, and I feel like an hour per maze probably is a lot. But when you look at that line, it's not going to look like a Horror Nights line where, you know, it just keeps going back and forth through switchbacks.
I think it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. I mean,
Batman.
Yeah, I mean, you can only go through each one of these things once, by the way, when you go to the event. That they do have a cap. You can only do things one time. So you can't lap things and do them multiple times.
I thought that was just with Losers Club. I think
no, that's with everything.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's because they said they wanted to be fair. Otherwise, people would be just getting back online constantly and staying there. You can stay in the party in the streets the whole night, though. You know, I think here's my concern. Right, is I do have that capacity concern, and we won't see how it plays out until it happens. Right, until the event goes underway. But in the meantime, you know, this is like their big shot. There's a lot of folks out there that are looking at this like this is WB's first year, and it's not. This is their third year in putting this event together. This year, though, this is the big year for them because they're on the map. They've pushed this thing out, and they've stripped the IP use out from other people to use. And I think now that's on the radar of everybody that, you know, everybody that pinged us over the last couple of episodes and said, Universal Studios is going to put an It House out there. And you're wrong because Attractions Magazine said, you know, they're going to do this or anything like that. And we got dozens of those comments. Universal is not going to get an It. They're not going to get Freddy. They're not going to get Jason going forward or The Conjuring and these things. Warner Brothers was very clear in their panel and saying that they realized that they were sitting on these horror IPs and they want to make the most use out of them themselves. They did clarify in the interview that we did with them that they realize they have key partners and business partners, and Universal is a good business partner of theirs for Harry Potter, and they need to play fair with them for Harry Potter, you know, and for, you know, implied for other franchises. But they're also working with the folks, you know, from Harry Potter land, not from Universal, you know, because Warner Brothers owns that film property, to include Harry Potter for Halloween for next year, as well as they want to put, you know, the next house that they all talked about trying to put together for next year was The Shining. They want to use these IPs going forward, and if this thing is a bust this year, or if this thing comes back with, you know, this really sucked because I had to wait an hour, and, you know, the house was 5 rooms, and I saw 3 guys dressed as Pennywise, that's a huge bummer. So I think there's a lot of pressure out there.
Oh, no, there definitely is. But, I mean, the fact that they've already been doing this last year, for example, they had a Conjuring maze and they had the really lame version of it and the tram tour. That's all they had, right? Like some Freddy maze that nobody liked. But the feedback and the reviews are still strong and very high. So I feel like it is a more intimate experience because of the cap on how many people they're allowed in. I can't really compare it to like Horror Nights. That's just, even though they have the IP and the names, you really can't. I'll just have to wait and see. But the fact that it's not a conga line, it's not like, you know, 30 people. It might only be like 10 people in that Batman maze working it. That may be it. But I feel like you're gonna have more immersive experience with those 10 than you would like 30 at Horror Nights.
Yeah.
And Joseph is definitely attending, so we will look forward to his review because I know that I'm unlikely to be able to get out there.
I'm also going the very last day of the event.
Oh, okay.
So if you want anything on clearance, let me know because I'm going to hit that gift shop right away.
Hey,
they do have a themed gift shop too, right? I forget what
Little Shop of Horrors.
Yes.
So besides Warner Brothers, which was kind of the star attraction, the other big thing that happened out in Midsummer was the combined panel of East and West Coast Halloween Horror Nights, and it was a treat to see creative folks from both sides of the coast, or from both coasts rather, of the country together. So you had Mike Aiello, John Murdy, and Chris, um, out there. And, there wasn't a lot of reveals. I think some folks were disappointed that they weren't getting a reveal.
Yeah, the only reveal was an accidental one, yeah.
Yeah, they got an accidental reveal that Trick or Treat would also be a scare zone in California. But it was really fun to watch. It was 2 hours worth of time. Nothing groundbreaking, I think. Just creative flow, how things work, and how they got into the business.
It was a full 2 hours, which was kind of surprising. And I got to tell you, like, of the panels, and I didn't go to the Elvira panel, but I mean, the line to get into that thing was insane because it was the last part of the convention. Like, the convention was over when this panel was over. So I think pretty much everyone at the convention ended their convention at this panel.
Yeah. That panel ran from like 5 to 6, I think, or either 4 to 5 or 5 to 6. They literally stayed there until 10 o'clock at night talking to people.
Yeah.
One off. So cheers to them for doing that. I thought it was a great way to really promote Universal stuff. And I know we're running short on time here. The last thing that I think we want to really talk about, just kind of the local scene for Florida, Howl-o-scream Tampa announced today that Insomnia would be taking the place of Zombie Containment Unit. So we have a new house announcement. So great for them. They've really been promoting Howl-o-scream hard this year. We saw some of the folks from Howl-o-scream yesterday out at Tampa Comic-Con. They had folks that were dressed up out there as well as naughty nurses, really promoting the event. That new house, Insomnia, is joining returning favorites Black Spot, Deathwater Bayou, Unearthed, Motel Hell. The pricing has been ridiculous for the event. Early bird special was like $20, and then it went up to $30. So I imagine the event's going to be really packed this year. And if you haven't bought your tickets, it's really an event that I think you should definitely check out as an alternative to Halloween Horror Nights. Any thoughts on Howl-o-scream, Joe?
I'm definitely going to go. I don't know when, I don't know how, but I haven't had a bad experience in that lineup. I mean, the Deathwater Bayou is worth the trip alone, so... And Motel Hell, I guess.
Yeah, I think those two houses might be the best houses in Florida.
Well, and if you're heading north, to Virginia, Howl-o-scream, they are doing their final full announcement on August 20th. They've been announcing things the 20th of every month for the last couple months. So I think there's still one more house left to announce, a couple of things still in the, still yet to be announced in this 20th year. But one thing they have announced is the Vault 20 house, which is a kind of a retrospective house of the best of the previous 20 years. So I'm pretty excited about that idea because I've been going to Howl-o-scream almost as long as it's been running here in Virginia. So it's kind of cool that it's hitting 20 years and making me feel old.
Last but not least, we're going to have to circle back on a lot of these local haunts. So Screamageddon's been very active on Twitter. They have announcements coming up. That's one of our favorite places to hit. I know at Petrified Forest, I drove past there a couple days ago. They're building out in the forest again, so they're up and running. Ominous Descent also had a presence out at Tampa Comic-Con with Sir Henry's Trail. One of the big things, and if you guys are listening from these local haunts, not only do we want to get out to all of your haunts this year, but you guys got to update your websites. The stuff that's out there is all 2017 at this point. It is extremely difficult to plan when to get out to these places when there's no new information out there. And there's so much goodness that you guys are sharing on social media. You need your websites to really be up to date to try to pull people in, because we want to be able to promote you also. And it's difficult to promote when, you have no idea when you're going to be opening and stuff like that. So,
well, and speaking of websites, check out iomgeek.com where we house this podcast. Check us out on Twitter for Hauntsman. And, of course, check out Kyle on youtube.com/cheapseatsview or youtube.com/ideology of madness for our videos from Midsummer Screen.
Check out Joey.
Or check out Joey.
Oh, yeah. Shameless plug. So I'm now a certified artist.
Oh.
And I'm setting up shop. So check me out. Check out my stuff. If you like something, we can talk. I need money.
Well, thank you guys for listening, and make sure to leave us some feedback, and we will talk to you next time.